The doorbell rang at exactly midnight. Mark Wilson, exhausted from another 14-hour workday, almost didn't answer it. His 8-year-old daughter Emma had finally fallen asleep after waiting up for him again, and the last thing he needed was noise waking her. But something pulled him to the door, perhaps the same instinct that had kept him going through these impossible weeks. When he opened it, his heart stopped. Standing there in the pouring rain was Eliza Blackwood herself, his billionaire boss, the woman who'd been driving him to the breaking point for weeks, looking nothing like the cold executive who terrorized the office. If you're feeling that tension already, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that explore the unexpected moments that change our lives forever. I promise, the ending of this one will leave you thinking about it for days. Mark had been drowning since his wife's death 18 months ago. Single parenthood, mortgage payments, and grief had nearly broken him. When the prestigious Blackwood Industries offered him a senior analyst position with double his previous salary, it seemed like salvation. What the job listing hadn't mentioned was Eliza Blackwood's reputation for burning through employees like matches. "Mr. Wilson," she said, rain dripping from her designer coat. "May I come in?" Her voice lacked its usual sharp edge. For weeks, she'd been the nightmare haunting his days, demanding reports at impossible deadlines, criticizing his work in front of the entire department, calling him at all hours. Just yesterday, she'd torn apart his quarterly projection in the boardroom, dismissing 6 weeks of work in 6 cutting minutes. "It's midnight, Ms. Blackwood," Mark said, acutely aware of his faded t-shirt and sweatpants. "I know. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important." Something in her eyes, vulnerability he'd never seen before, made him step aside. As she entered his modest home, Mark noticed how out of place she looked among his daughter's toys and his worn furniture. Eliza Blackwood had graced magazine covers, built a tech empire from nothing, and was worth billions. Yet here she stood in his living room, suddenly seeming smaller than her reputation. "Is that your daughter?" she asked, noticing the school photo on the wall. "Emma. She's 8. Eliza nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I came to give you this." Inside was his quarterly projection, the one she'd eviscerated yesterday, but now covered in notes, corrections, and surprisingly, praise. "This is brilliant work, Mark. With these adjustments, it could save the company millions." Mark stared at her, confused. "You could have emailed this. Or waited until morning." "No," she said, sinking onto his couch without invitation. "I couldn't." What followed was a confession that changed everything. Eliza hadn't been targeting him specifically, she'd been desperately trying to save the company from a hostile takeover. The pressure had been crushing her too, and she'd transferred that pressure to her team, especially Mark, whose talent she recognized immediately. "I saw myself in you," she admitted. "The determination, the intelligence. But tonight, I saw something else." She'd come to the office late and found Emma's drawing on his desk, a crayon picture of Mark and Emma holding hands with, "I miss you, Daddy," written in a child's handwriting. Next to it was a calendar with all of Emma's school events, most crossed out with the note, "Missed due to work." "I had a father like you," Eliza said quietly. "Brilliant, hard-working, devoted. He worked himself to death trying to give me everything, except what I needed most, his time." The revelation stunned Mark. The Ice Queen had a heart after all, and a painful past that had shaped her into the demanding perfectionist she'd become. "I'm not here just to apologize," she continued. "I'm here to make changes. Starting with your position." Mark's heart sank. After all his sacrifices, she was firing him anyway. "I want to promote you to Director of Strategic Planning, with a substantial raise," she said, surprising him. "But with conditions, no more 80-hour weeks. No missed school plays. And you'll work directly with me to restructure how our department functions." Mark couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Why would you do this?" "Because talent like yours is rare, but a childhood only happens once." She glanced at Emma's photo again. And because I need someone who'll tell me the truth, even when I don't want to hear it. As they talked into the early morning hours, Mark learned about the woman behind the billionaire facade. Orphaned at 16, Eliza had built her empire while carrying the weight of her father's absence and her mother's subsequent depression. Success had come at the cost of connection. She had everything and no one. "Daddy?" Emma's sleepy voice interrupted them. She stood in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. Mark tensed, but Eliza smiled, a genuine smile he'd never seen at work. "Hello, Emma. I'm Ms. Blackwood, your dad's boss. I was just telling him he doesn't have to work this weekend. Maybe you two could do something fun instead?" Emma's face lit up. "Really? Can we go to the Science Museum, Daddy? You promised last month." "We absolutely can," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. What began that night transformed both their lives. Under their new arrangement, productivity actually increased while working hours decreased. Mark found balance, becoming both the father and professional he wanted to be. Eliza discovered that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was the leadership quality she'd been missing. 6 months later, when the company successfully fought off the takeover attempt, Eliza credited their new approach. "Sometimes saving a company means saving its people first," she told the board. The friendship that developed between them surprised everyone, especially Mark. Eliza became a regular visitor, even attending Emma's school science fair as her project advisor. The woman who once terrified the office became Emma's role model and Mark's most trusted ally. 1 year after that midnight visit, as they celebrated the company's most profitable quarter ever, Eliza confessed something else. "That night wasn't just about your daughter's drawing. It was about you." She'd recognized in Mark not just an employee worth saving, but a man worth knowing, someone who'd faced loss but kept his humanity intact. In trying to save him from becoming like her father, she'd found a path to healing her own past. "This story reminds me of my own experience years ago, when a mentor saw something in me I couldn't see myself. Sometimes the people who push us hardest are the ones who believe in us most, they just don't always know how to show it right." The midnight conversations that change our lives rarely happen on schedule or as expected. The true measure of success isn't what we achieve alone, but what we build together. For Eliza and Mark, what began as an impossible professional relationship became something neither expected, a second chance at family, in all its complicated forms. If this story touched you, remember that behind every demanding boss or struggling colleague might be a story you don't yet understand. Sometimes the greatest act of leadership is simply showing up at someone's door, ready to make things right. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that explore the unexpected connections that change our lives. And share in the comments, has someone ever pushed you to your breaking point, only to become an unexpected ally? Sometimes our greatest challenges lead to our most meaningful relationships, often when we least expect them.